Welcome to Sunday Morning at the Marxist Library. For 15 years, the Institute for the Critical Study of Society has put on these programs every Sunday morning religiously, if you might allow me to use that metaphor. And our mentor, Karl Marx, he said, religion is the heart of a heartless world, and we sure need some heart right now. To find out more about our programs at the Marxist Library, go to our website. Our website is ICSS Marx.org, and you can find future programs, and you can sign up for announcements for future programs. And also we post YouTube videos of all our past programs so that they're all there. Now, normally in these programs, and our program today is about the ongoing resistance to the Zionist, imperialist oppression of the Palestinian people, and the resistance to that, particularly on the campuses by faculty and by students. Normally, I would read a bio of our guest, who is Danny Shaw, and is remarkably well qualified to speak on the topic. But fortunately for me, there just came out a kick-ass video. Al Jazeera just made a short video about Danny and the struggle. So to introduce this program, I'm going to ask Mehmet to show the video. We'll then have a discussion with Danny, he and I, an interview format. And then following that, we'll have a short announcements and then a robust Q&A. So Mehmet, if you could show that video, please.
Palestine will be free.
Why do they have helicopters? Why do they have drones? Why do they have the National Guard threat? We're a bunch of geeks.
I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win.
Somebody get in the medical! We need water here.
I need to watch.
Let go of the camera. I got it. Have it.
Have me.
I got it.
Stop with the camera.
Hold on.
I've been a professor at the City University of New York since 2007, but I was fired last month because of my online posts against the genocide in Gaza.
Free, free, free Palestine!
I cry watching TV. I was crying during her speech. Crying isn't enough. Are we ready to all get arrested?
We will not stop, we will not rest this close. Divest. We will not stop, we will not rest this close. Divest. We will not stop, we will not rest
This battle has never had anything to do with religion. It's a struggle against colonialism. Judaism is a historic religion and spiritual way of life. Zionism is the complete negation of Palestinian nationhood, existence, and life.
You are ordered to leave the roadway and utilize the available sidewalk. If you do so voluntarily, no charges will be placed against you. If you remain in the roadway and refuse to utilize the sidewalk,
The crimes they commit are not Jewish. It's Zionistic.
leave the roadway and obstruct the vehicular
According to the Jewish Torah, all these crimes are illegal.
roadway and utilize the available sidewalk.
Zionism is a genocidal disease!
You will be placed under arrest and charged with disorderly conduct.
They try to label us the terrorists. We're not the terrorists. What are our crimes?
If you remain in the roadway and refuse to utilize the sidewalk, you will be placed under arrest and charged with disorderly conduct.
I became passionate about Palestine because my mother had put different books in my hands about Palestinian resistance when I was a young teenager. My father really wasn't there. It was always me and my mom against the world. When you come up with all types of trauma, being the underdog in this society, coming from poverty, boxing was a way to reel it back in, to stay focused. When I say that boxing saved my life, it's not an exaggeration or hyperbole. If I don't have outlets, you know, I start to go crazy because we see the children under the rubble. We see every hospital in Gaza destroyed. We see a complete lack of respect for Palestinians as if they weren't human beings. Come on, let me breathe.
I said I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah.
Tonight's the big night. We're expecting the NYPD raid. The CUNY authorities have said that they want us off of City College campus.
Let the students teach. Let the students
It's really the youth, it's the students who are leading us, and that's our main role, to support these students and in defense of academic freedom and their First Amendment rights.
Honestly, it's been scary being here, you know? The threat of the police, the threat of losing my education, but this is all worth it for liberation for all people, for Palestine.
It is right to rebel. It is right to rebel. NYPD go to hell. NYPD go to hell.
When the police come in to brutalize and arrest the students and rip down the encampments, you know, that's the moment for us professors to be there.
Students, hold your ground.
Students, hold your ground.
NYPD back down.
NYPD back down.
NYPD KKK.
NYPD KKK.
IDF, you're all the same.
IDF, you're all the same.
IDF, you're all the same.
Is there any way out of here? Down there? So we're surrounded by NYPD riot police on all sides. The professors of CUNY, we want to be the first line of defense for our brave students who are making these sacrifices. Any second, the police could be invading.
Oh, the cops are coming now.
This is the New York City Police Department. You have been warned as per City College to leave the campus. If you refuse to leave, you have been warned as per City College campus. If you refuse to leave, you may be placed under arrest.
You guys gotta leave.
We're pressed.
It's pressed.
Yes, you gotta leave.
We will not stop. We will not rest.
What number arrest was last night?
For me?
Yeah.
In my life?
Yeah.
If I were to tell you all the different times I was arrested, we'd be here for a long time.
I'm getting anxious. I'm getting.
Did you take your medication? So even the jail experience was very collective. It wasn't about us and our minor inconvenience compared to what the Palestinian people have been going through. The whole time we're chanting, Gaza, Gaza, Gaza. We didn't have our hands, so we're all just stamping and stamping. Gaza. And no matter what, we wouldn't stop. And I don't think the police had ever seen that level of unity and organization.
Your accomplishments, I'm very proud of you.
No matter how hard they attack us, discredit us, dehumanize us, arrest us, break our bones, bomb our people across the Middle East and Palestine, we have a historical responsibility. We hope that this student-led movement continues to inspire people across the world to stand up. As the famous Chinese proverb says, it only takes a spark to start a prairie fire.
Wow. That was terrific program. Danny, we want to get into those bigger issues, especially that spark that set off a student rebellion against the genocide. But let's focus first on your particular case. After 18 years, you were fired from the City University of New York. Tell us a little bit about your case, and then we'll get into some of the larger issues, please.
Thanks so much, Roger, for the invite, and super grateful, honored to share with you all. The Marxist Library has done a great deal of ideological and organizational work for a long time now. First time I came here was probably 3-4 years ago as a speaker. I spoke on the Black Panther Party for self-defense formulation, the capitalism plus dope equals genocide, and how that formulation is more accurate than ever in our historical epic now. And I remember my good friend, comrade, and mentor, Gary Hicks, was there. So very special and nostalgic every time I come back. I believe last year when I returned from Haiti in the summer, and Haiti's already being invaded, the US invasion, they're trying to call it multinational. It's the same old neo-colonial tricks. So I spoke on Haiti last summer. I was back in Haiti this February. So there's many updates there. Yeah, so I began as a research assistant in the Dominican Republic, in the Caribbean at John Jay College back in 1999. And then I became a professor there in the spring of 2007. So it's a 25-year relationship with this institution. It's considered a Hispanic serving institution. More than 50% of the students are Latino. And I was fired on March, it was the Sunday before Easter. I kept receiving phone calls on the weekend from the department chair of Latin American and Latinx studies. It used to be Latin American and Caribbean studies. Now it's Latinx. We won't debate that now. And I was like, why is my boss keep calling me over the weekend? And I missed him when I called him back. And finally he got a hold of me. And I think he was more shocked than me, because I knew. I mean, I was on October 20th, I was doxxed. And when the Canary Mission and the Anti-Defamation League, these different Zionist outfits, they use highfalutin language to masquerade the racist, pro-colonial, pro-genocide work that they do. StopAntisemitism.org, quote unquote. These groups dox me. And when they dox you and they put your information out there publicly, you receive a barrage of threats, whether it was via my work email, my personal email, Instagram, text, my personal information, my family's information was out there. They published a series of articles against me in Israel and in the Zionist diaspora in Europe and in the US. And that then galvanized hundreds of thousands, millions of Zionists to take actions against me. Of course, this is a one-trick pony, as colonialism always is. In their line of attack was that I was an anti-Semite. They tried to find anything, and I got a book out called "This Is Genocide" that I released about 3 months ago. And they went wherever they could to find anything that they could try to manipulate as egregious. And that's what this ideological showdown is right now. It's the conflation of anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. And quite frankly, the populations of the West don't have any of the critical historiography, the critical anti-Zionist and Palestinian and working class Jewish historiography. So the president of the college, President Carol Mason, a lawyer herself who comes out of the Democratic Party machinery, she herself has said, at least semi-publicly, that she didn't even agree with the decision to fire me, even though it's her decision. She didn't think that I was anti-Semitic. But what the Zionist offensive was able to do, they were able to put John Jay College up against the wall because they threatened a Title VI investigation. That's a civil rights investigation. And if a university is under that level of scrutiny for civil rights violations and racism and anti-Semitism, if they're able to artificially create that case, I mean, that threatens millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. So she said, quite frankly, and I'm sure my lawyer is all over the transcripts of these different town halls, because she had never met me. They never bothered to call me into any meeting after a quarter of a century of service, after having 6,500 college students just here in New York City. That doesn't count when I was teaching abroad and other lectures. They fired me. My departments, they certainly don't come from our worldview. Only Luis Barrios, a veteran liberation theologian, veteran Puerto Rican independence fighter, he stood with me, but he's semi-retired. The rest of the department, it's about 20 of us, they were completely overwhelmed, indifferent, scared, confused. They did not come to my defense in any way. Other departments did, other professors did. I'm not the only one who's been fired. So I think the court battles are going to take a number of years. The battle in the streets, us professors are sticking together. The fact that they would use any of our words from Twitter or social media or our books, you know, to try to make this case that we're somehow violating students' civil rights, it gives you a sense of how bad faith the Zionists are in their line of attack. Can they bamboozle the American populace with what Dr. Norman Finkelstein classifies as the weaponization of anti-Semitism? That's a little bit about my my own case.
Yeah.
The union stands up for the free speech part, but then when it comes to Palestine, the professional staff, Congress has not been as strong.
So the ICSS, the Marxist Library, has posted the petition on your behalf. But is there anything else that we could do to support you in the cases, not only of you, but of other people that have been fired because of their political beliefs?
Yeah, and thank you so much for the solidarity. This is not about us as individuals. It's about a wider cause. It's about the global Palestinian family. And of course, first and foremost, it's about Gaza. And what are we up to? 225 days of genocidal violence, genocidal starvation campaign, dehydration. We actually have a close comrade from the Midwestern Marx Institute and the Troika Collective who's in Gaza as a medical solidarity activist and coordinator. So we interviewed him, as a matter of fact, at 4 a.m. East Coast time this morning. Another thing that'll be super helpful, the Wednesday that we had the rally for myself, Lisa, a professor in Japanese literature, at Hunter College. She was fired because she posted back in October that she didn't feel comfortable being near any human being who was silent before a genocide. Just for that, they fired her. There is my good buddy, Professor Tomac, a Polish psychologist, very similar. He was fired from Hunter and NYU. So we had a rally, a joint rally. I mean, at this point, honestly, the days, it's been so much struggle in the streets when you camped out at Columbia. And yesterday we were at the new school. The new school is the last encampment hanging on. They have 7 floors of the new school occupied on 13th Street and 5th Ave. So shout out to those student and faculty leaders. We had this demonstration at John Jay, but it was the first day of the Colombia encampment, and it was also Palestinian Political Prisoner Day. So we marched from John Jay College, the local rally for those of us who were fired. We went down to Union Square, and then we all headed up to Columbia. Columbia was already surrounded by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of riot police and every threat on earth. So to be honest, Roger, these individual campaigns we haven't had time. I mean, I was then camped out at Columbia. It was once you left Columbia, I'm an alumni, undergrad 1996 to 2000. I was at Columbia, got a degree in sociology and South American and Caribbean studies, went back to graduate school in 2004 to 2006 at the School of International and Public Affairs on 119th in Amsterdam. And we want to do a blitz, phone calls, emails. That'll probably be like a post Labor Day thing because, you know, universities shut down in the summertime. That's one of the disadvantages of this form of struggle. It's a creative form of struggle, student activism, student encampments. I think it's the alliance with labor that can give us even more power. And shout out to all the unions. More and more unions are standing up to denounce this Holocaust of human life, this asymmetrical affair. And CNN continues to say that this is Israel versus Hamas. No, this is the entire colonial capitalist world versus the indigenous people of Palestine trapped in a tiny ghetto that was already under attack. I feel like post October 7th, I have not had to use the term neo-colonialism because this is outright naked brutality and colonialism, white supremacy, and on and on.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, you have an undergraduate degree and a master's degree from Columbia, and you found yourself back at Columbia, not on a tenure track, but at a really higher track than that, teaching students once again and other comrades about the struggle. So tell us a little bit about that. That was, as you said, the spark to lit the prairie. I was in Cuba on May 1st, and the president of Cuba was talking about the students at Columbia University. I mean, it was a shot that was heard around the world, and a shot that just took off. So, kind of give us a little bit of a feel for that, and what your involvement was, and what you saw there, please.
Yeah, if you had told me a month ago, well, at this point, 5 weeks ago, you know, that I would have been camped out at Columbia and, you know, at my alma mater, I would have said, well, you're crazy. I have no business back there. In 2006, when thank goodness I had already had my graduate degree. But the Minutemen, I think you all, you know, from California will remember the anti-immigrant, xenophobic, racist outfit, the Minutemen, who would go to the border and work with the quote unquote border, protection and target immigrants with violence. And the Minutemen came to Columbia October 4th, 2006, and we shut them down. I was assaulted. My face was cut open by these the violent Minutemen, but who was the person declared persona non grata at my alma mater, myself and others. And now, if you all remember, that was the front page news story on Fox News. Bill O'Reilly infamously or famously, said that Columbia University, University of Havana North. So naturally, we made T-shirts that said, "Welcome to the lucha, the struggle, at Columbia University of Havana North," just to make that Cuba connection that Roger made, and how amazing that in Cuban society they can hear the truth about these different anti-colonial issues. Part of the struggle at Colombia, I mean, that encampment was so infested with mainstream corporate media. I mean, CNN all day, they had cameras on, no matter what we did for privacy. When the Muslim sisters and brothers and the Jewish sisters and brothers, when people were praying, we had to hold up the keffiyehs and the blankets to give them privacy, and every last troll looking for the sensationalism. And they interviewed us, and just myself personally, and in the movement in general, Fox News, The Atlantic, MSNBC, CNN, on and on, The New Yorker. I was interviewed, as were many, and if they couldn't get something anti-Semitic out of you, they had no interest in using any of your words. And that goes for all the New York news stations as well, the Daily News and the New York Post. And if you want to see what a hit piece looks like, The Atlantic did a whole hit piece on me. They ignored the 45-minute interview, manipulated my words. These are professional managers of consent. So the media piece was a big piece. And shout out to these Columbia students who lit the spark that inspired this prairie fire. But of course, it's UCal Irvine and UCLA and the brutality of these Zionist mobs to attack and for the LAPD to stand there. I mean, this stuff is so criminal, and they continually come at us and say that we're violent. And who have we ever hurt? There's one quote I overheard in the Al Jazeera thing when they raided us. We were raided twice at Columbia, but every night they didn't want us to sleep. So every night, the threat of the raid, the spirit of Kent State and the Orangeburg massacre in South Carolina and Jackson State, that specter certainly hung over us. Now, yeah, Columbia at this point is $90,000 per year, about twice as much as when I graduated in 2000. One significant statistic that came out in the Columbia Spectator, the student newspaper, is that over half of the students were like myself, scholarship students. And in my case, it was a basketball scholarship in 1996. These students were from working class backgrounds: the Ethiopian students, the Eritrean students, the Muslim students, and the Dominican students, and the Black students. And it was an incredible display of student unity. I think for me, I published a piece that I think you all will enjoy with Black Agenda Report, Columbia students versus the state. And what I tried to do in this piece was really capture the spirit of what we were doing. We had a people's kitchen, we had a people's library. Once you were in there, if you left, it was a wrap. So, I'm wearing who knows whose sweater, and it was cold at night. I mean, New York City in April and May is no joke. It went down into the 30s at night. And to see the determination, and I'm an ethnographer by trade. So I was just observing, and I was a student activist at Columbia during the ethnic studies struggles in the 1990s. And we had, of course, labor solidarity struggles. I'm not a stranger to occupations. If anyone ever said, well, perhaps not this crowd, but if my generation, your generation, trained my generation directly and indirectly, those of us who said or were told in high school, they always told me, you belong in the 1960s. You're going to see you'll change once you get to New York City, they'll change you. But I went to Columbia. I applied to Columbia for one reason, the same reason that I admired Berkeley, because of this spirit of student resistance. And so I went to Columbia for that reason. And I think it was the closest one could ever get to 1968. you could feel it, you could feel it. Butler Library, and just, I get goosebumps. Of course, I'm the #1 critic of the bureaucracy in the Board of Trustees. I do not represent Columbia, as an institution in any way, but these students and these grad students and the staff and the workers and the professors, it was very beautiful. Us professors, whether it was at City College or Columbia, it was symbolic. Look, how militant can you be when you're surrounded by thousands and thousands of riot police, drones, NYPD, helicopters? They were using the threat of the National Guard. And that's why I said that quote. And I didn't just say, why are the helicopters? Why are they attacking us? We're a bunch of geeks. And that's the thing about these documentaries and stuff. You really have no control over the production phase. But what I said was, but we're dangerous geeks because we're anti-imperialist geeks. And our weapons, our books, in history. So it wasn't just that we're geeks. They took out the punchline. But anyway, I am not the director or the editor, so I have to let go, let God, and let good, as we say in 12-step recovery.
Good, good, good. I'm glad you mentioned the start part about Colombia, because one of our comrades on the program committee, Gene Rule, he'll probably say something in the Q&A. He was there in '68. And so Columbia, even though it is one of the most elite schools and certainly one of the most expensive schools, has always played a key role. Do you have any sort of insight into why that's the case?
Well, you're correct. I mean, we Marx taught us in 1848 the ideas of every society, are the ruling ideas of every society, are the ideas of the ruling class. If this first encampment was at a community college in Texas or Virginia, would anyone have cared or noticed? We know the answer. So it's a class issue. This is where, I mean, Zionism has said publicly over and over for decades that the universities are like their first line of attack. This was Netanyahu, and it's really wrong for me to just say Netanyahu's nightmare. This was Zionism's nightmare. Liberal Zionism, whatever type of Zionism, Zionism is Zionism. And I think Zionism has proven that what I said on October 20th, it's beyond mental illness. It's a genocidal disease. I think that has been proven true for 76 years since the first 750,000 Palestinians were displaced. And I wrote this book. There's an epic poem in the spirit of Pablo Neruda and many of the poetic mentors before me, where I contextualize what October 7th wasn't. Was October 7th any different than the Lakota people standing up to General Custer and all these indigenous nations resisting the Trail of Tears and how many centuries of displacement of colonialism? So it's not lost upon me that it was Columbia's stature, Harvard's stature. And that's why back in October, you didn't hear so much. I mean, certainly the doxing happened, and then they put your pictures on little trucks and they drive the trucks. I mean, it's so absurd. I can in some ways laugh about it. I'm 46. At this point, I'm a veteran. I'm hardened. I remember they asked me how many times I got arrested. 15, 16, 17. I mean, when they first invaded Iraq, we shut down Rockefeller Center. When they first invaded Afghanistan in 2001, and when they murdered Amadou Diallo and Patrick Dorismond and Mike Brown, so all these different struggles, that's been one of the important ways of fighting back was civil disobedience. So there's some images I can show from those nights. I'll queue them up on my social media on Instagram. Unfortunately, they took out my Twitter when they doxed me. The campaign against me publicly was, we got to get this Nazi out of work. He's dangerous. And when, I don't know if it's hundreds of thousands or millions of people are labeling you a Nazi and a Jew hater and all this absurd stuff, yeah, they were able to convince Elon Musk to shut down my Twitter. But I think these things are inevitable. Audre Lorde has that quote, you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. But it is an asymmetrical informational battle. And it hurts when you do entire press conferences and you do half-an-hour interviews and over the same talking points, why this is a genocide and why can't the Palestinians have their own nationhood and all of this historical stuff from 1948, and they ignore every single sentence over and over, proving how undemocratic this media truly is. So the Columbia Spark lit a prairie fire. You have City College, the new schools, the last encampment that's standing. I think the police attack 2 nights ago. Last night I heard differing accounts. I left about 8 p.m. last night. I didn't have the night shift, but all these students embody a real spirit of love, of solidarity. The Atlantic quoted me as saying that Professor Danny Shaw thinks the encampments are a Shangri-La. And I like that. And they want to describe it as an Semitic hell. And how could that be if we had the Passover dinners and everyone was invited and we were in these I mean, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. I don't mean to sound idealistic, but for you to have a Palestinian dance performance followed by Yiddish classes it was very beautiful. And I hope that all of you, if you haven't been able to get out there, go visit these students, bring them some brownies, bring them whatever you can bring that love, bring that solidarity. If you have to drive an extra hour or two, and bring also your physical presence and body, because we're under attack. I think the worst attacks were at UCLA, certainly, but we're so proud of these students, and that's why I was there. I wasn't trying to play any leadership role. I was just saying, hey, as alumni, and the alumni are all over the place at Columbia. That's another story. But just wanted to be there very humbly and quietly to support them.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Just plain material solidarity with those encampments all over the country, and we should all do that. I want to hear a little bit more about the life in the encampment. As you probably know, in 2014, U.S. State Department Deputy Secretary Victoria Nuland was in Ukraine. And they had the Maidan uprising there, and Victoria Nuland handed out cookies. Now, Victoria Nuland has left the government. She's now at Columbia. I don't imagine she was handing out cookies at your encampment. Tell us a little bit more about the life in the encampment and how that was organized, because it seems like those encampments are very mature in terms of the level of organization and the political sharpness of their organization.
Yeah. And pictures speak 1,000 words, so I'll narrate this with
Thank you.
images behind us. Here we have our good friend, Dr. Norman Finkelstein and Dr. Mark Lamont Hill. We had many different visitors and speakers. This was on day 3. We didn't know what was in store for us. Things were so simple then in the beginning. This is CUNY for Palestine, different professors who've been fired, who are under attack. This was... Yeah, this was one of the Shabbat Shalom prayer and singing moments. It was very, very beautiful. That's Butler Library there, right behind us. Some more images, building with the students. This is interesting. I can't pause it, but I lived here. I lived in that building in 1996. And all the while, the house is sending billions and billions more for Israel. Oh yeah, so in 1996, as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, I moved here on the 13th floor of Carmen Hall. So I guess I have a 3-decade relationship with Columbia University. The solidarity from around the city, MTA workers there with a creative expression of solidarity. We need to see more of those. I don't know how they perform that one. The outside, constantly outside. I just showed that so you could see the link between the outside protests and the inside protest. This is key. How's the volume when I play the clips? Is the volume okay?
Perfect, Danny.
All right, because I want to walk you through this moment.
The speaker is off. on the click.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna come back to it. I just want to contextualize what this is. The Zionist, who is the Zionist? What is a Zionist? One way to think about Zionism is white supremacy on steroids. There's many different ways we can understand Zionism, but constantly Zionists were trying to come into the camp, start arguments. They would flail their arms, pretend like they were under attack, start screaming anti-Semitic things. Just very bizarre, very divorced from humanity. Why would the Zionists themselves, if they're claiming to be victims of anti-Semitism, come into our spaces and start screaming horrific, lewd things like kill all the Jews, and horrible stuff, like skits that they had rehearsed. I don't know if they somehow thought that that would catch on. It was bizarre. It was bizarre. It was so beneath us, so foreign to us. As I told CNN, it doesn't merit a response. It is beneath us. And then to force the Jewish comrades and the Jewish leadership to have to justify that they're not anti-Semitic. I mean, this stuff is very bizarre when you actually sit with it. But we're up against a very powerful enemy, another Marxist formulation. We have to go back to the economic base to understand the superstructure, right? And what's the economic base? What are the needs of the capitalists, of the imperialists? Well, total control of the Middle East. The British colonizers, this is what I write about, and this is genocide. This is the history that they're trying to erase, and they're suspending students and they're firing professors if you dare to teach the true history, how Israel is formed. It's formed not because suddenly the Western world had compassion. Western civilization is Isaac Deutscher, a great Marxist-Leninist scholar, one of the great historians that our class, I think, produced last century. Isaac Deutscher said Western civilization failed the Jewish people, and now Western civilization again fails an indigenous people, fails the Palestinian people. So 2024 is a very 1492 moment. So I lost my so when the Zionists would come in, discipline, centralism, organization, because what the Zionists want to do is distract us. So there were signs up everywhere that said stay focused. This is about Gaza. This is about Gaza. This is about Palestine. Don't let the colonial narcissist, there's another definition of Zionism. It's a disease of colonial narcissism. Don't let them distract us. And I want to show you what for me was a very touching moment. It was a very civil rights moment, because the Zionists wouldn't stop. They're trying to hop over fences. They're trying to start fights. They're trying to destroy our food. Just a very, very bad-spirited. And I want to show this how we had to react when we were infiltrated, penetrated, when they had us in potentially dangerous moments, because their goal was, of course, to shut down the encampments. Hopefully this volume is good. Just let me know if it's not.
Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, my friend. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go. Where you go.
The video might be a little anticlimactic, because who am I to be showing students' faces when students who haven't been doxxed can be doxxed, and if they haven't been suspended, they can be suspended. But what you witnessed just there, I should have contextualized it a little better. 3 Zionists are there. They're trying to disrupt the camp. They're trying to start fights. We all lock arms. We sing civil rights songs. You know, your struggle is my struggle. Your struggle is mine. And We shall overcome. And there's hundreds and hundreds of us with locked arms, and we're sharing. And then one of the student leaders says, you know, one step forward, and we all advance 300, 400 students and grad students, and, you know, the professors like myself who were out there and alumni. Okay, so back to back to my little tour of the, here's the actual sign. So it was the #1 rule. The people who are trained, and everyone was trained all day. We did not lose a second. The students are preparing for finals. We have teach-ins with the greats, with some of the great minds of this generation. Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, some of the SDS leaders and Black student leaders from 1968 came and spoke. We weren't wasting time. It was the greatest camping trip of my life. You know, I didn't want to leave because I knew once I left, the security was so intense. And the security would come in and try to divide us and kick out some people and not others constantly. Let's see if there's any other images I can show quick. And that's why I wrote the piece for Black Agenda Report. I wanted to take the reader into the elan, into the zeitgeist, into the beauty. And that's why I couldn't leave, because we didn't have access to showers. Like it was cold at night. Like there were real material difficulties sleeping on that cold ground with, you know, I don't care how much tin foil, and, you know, I learned all the camping tricks. I think I became more of a professional camper. But what the NYPD would do, they kept threatening invasion, along with the Baroness herself. If you don't know, the president of Columbia University is a Baroness. It's a bit telling. She sits
Is
on
she
the.
a real Baroness? I know that people.
She's a real Baroness. She has British and Egyptian royal blood.
No kidding.
Who are us proletarians and plebeians to even stand up to this you know, global royalty? My goodness. I mean, it doesn't get more feudal and colonial. My goodness. They called the police
Let me
on us
ask you,
twice.
or are you queuing up some more images?
No, go for it. I can talk all day, Roger.
Well, I hope you will. I want to ask some hard questions about contradictions amongst the people, because often within left organizations, left movements, we have people that are ultra leftists, and they lead us in directions that are counterproductive. They have us do adventuristic things that endanger the whole group. They make us lead us to use slogans that alienate the masses that we're trying to win over and stuff like that. But these encampments have been amazing in terms of their discipline in avoiding that. And it's really the first time in my life that I've seen that level of discipline and maturity. Can you tell us a little bit how people got to that? Because, you know, these are young folks. They didn't make the ultra left, infantile left mistakes that my generation made.
Great question, Roger. At the risk of, you know, oversimplification on the left, there's perhaps four competing ideologies. Again, I'm not looking for a polemic. I'm just trying to frame this. But of course, the polemics are healthy, and I'm sure it'll come up in the question and answer. You have those who subscribe to anarchism, you have Marxism, Leninism, you have liberalism, and then you have the ultra leftism. And I'm 46, I've been doing this for 3 decades. I'm a product of the Dominican Republic's left, the Haitian left, all of my time in Venezuela and the Bolivarian experience with the Cubans and the Nicaraguans, and always studying, always observing. And ultra leftists are the most difficult, if not impossible, individuals to ever bring into any type of unified effort. There was some ultra leftism And I'll give some concrete examples of how it played out, and the kind of conclusion of introducing those four schools of thought that are quote unquote on the left. The ultra leftists are the most sectarian, or the most impossible to ever get to work with you. Whether they want to be party wreckers or movement wreckers, they often do the bidding of the state. I think within anarchy, we can't group all of our anarchist brothers and sisters. I'm starting to sound like Cornel West a little bit there with that formulation, but looking for proletarian unity in its maximum expression, because these are moments of unity. I mean, let's stop this genocide, then we can have our argument about the Soviet entrance into Czechoslovakia in 1968. There's clearly a primary contradiction before humanity right now. We can figure out, we can go into the tomes later of history. So I'll just share an anecdote, because at the zenith of Black Lives Matter, I don't know if you all, I have the impression that this is much more West Coast, but surely there's some, East Coast presence here as well. But at the height of the Black Lives Matter struggle, when it was beginning to be called Black Lives Matter, I forget if it was Christmas season 2016 or 17, I think 2016. I don't know if y'all remember, but there were attacks on the police. Baton Rouge, Dallas, I think they were both veterans of the U.S. military, and they opened fire. They actually killed police. And here in Brooklyn, New York, an individual drove from Baltimore to Brooklyn and shot the first two police that he could find in their car. The liberal mayor, Bill de Blasio, who was even with the Sandinistas, my goodness, what type of capitalist, representative is that one? Trying to flex those 1980s Central American solidarity muscles to bamboozle us, right? Bill de Blasio overnight said, anyone who marches now, because Black Lives Matter was very popular and liberal, and once those two police were killed in New York City, everyone told us, similar to Kathy Hochul, the governor now, she said, if you march in October, that means you support Hamas and you're a terrorist. And we said, that's ridiculous. You're not going to monopolize this historical narrative where we're going to march because Palestine has every right to exist, to resist, et cetera. And that's not to necessarily, that's to contextualize October 7th and through an anti-colonial lens. We marched in 2016. This is December 21st. And the police, if you stepped off the sidewalk on December 21st, we went to Fifth Ave, we went to interrupt the Christmas shopping for Black Lives Matter and Mike Brown. You all remember the Ferguson struggle. The police would lock you up so quick and manhandle you and brutalize you. And we continued to march. At the front of the march, we had our security. It's over the course of decades that you build up trust and you know who's who. But inevitably, in those moments of sharp class conflict, the state is trying to infiltrate. So as we led that march through Fifth Ave and the throngs of consumers and shoppers, there were these very, very shady individuals. They can't look like me, or the movement's going to know they're police. They have to look like the demographic that's leading the struggle, Black and Arab and oppressed people. And it was very clear to us that there was a fine, fine line between the ultras, the ultra leftists, and the state. And to this day, 10 years later, we don't know exactly who was an infiltrator, an agent provocateur, or just someone who was so frustrated with centuries of police brutality that they thought they knew better than the revolutionary leadership formed in the crucible of class struggle over in a process of decades, right? Well, the same thing happened, not so much at Columbia, but at the City College of New York. Individuals showed up. We'd never seen them before. They didn't respect our security. They didn't respect our media leadership because we were extremely well organized, to speak to Roger's point. We had a media team, and the media team had a representative, a spokesperson. We had an assembly team. Every morning, every night, we needed to have assemblies. We had to be on the same page. So we had the People's Kitchen team. We had like 10 different teams, and new teams would be formed as was necessary. So when you see wannabe Bravehearts with half their face painted, running around, you've never seen them before, no one knows them, they won't listen to our security, they won't come to assembly. At what point are they dropping bugging devices everywhere, trying to find some type of anti-Semitic buzzword? So again, the ultra left was doing the bidding of the state, and surprise, surprise, to come full circle, when we were all in handcuffs, they were nowhere to be found. The most militant, the most militant, quote unquote, can always lead in the moments that are not, don't need real militancy. And in the moments of truth, when we're up against the state, where are they? So there was infiltration. It was very sloppy. It was very obvious. There's only so much I can talk about too, because some of it gets a bit into legalese, and we have to take care of our people, because for some students in those moments, they don't know, if these people look militant and they're setting up extra layers of fencing, and they're the ones running around, they won't communicate with any of us. But for a young student, that could look like, well, these are the fighters, this is who I want to join. But to us, it was it was terribly obvious. So that kind of gives you a brief insight to how some of that played out. They would never come to assembly. They would never get into a circle and have critical conversations with us.
Yeah. So let me ask one last question, then we'll take a break. Alan will make some announcements, then we'll get into our usual question and answer. But let me end this part of the program with a question about the student movement, because we are seeing an incredibly mature student movement, and we've also seen an incredibly engaged student movement. And the primary issue has been, of course, Palestine. But for students today, they're facing different issues than I did when the baby boomer generation that I come from. My parents came out of the Depression, but for me, being a post World War II baby, the future looked pretty bright. There was every expectation for working class people, for poor people, to better the conditions that they lived in and to live in the better conditions than their parents. There was an expectation that you would own a house someday. Now, for many of these students, even fairly well-off students at Columbia and at these other campuses, those expectations are not there. So I'm wondering what your thoughts were, that the Palestinian issue is one issue, but it touches on very much broader issues and ones that particularly motivate the student population. Do you care to comment on that a bit?
Yeah, these students were very well studied. Some of them had been to occupied Palestine, extremely passionate. The Baroness, Manoush Shafiq, the Board of Trustees, the NYPD, Eric Adams, and one of the big headlines the past 72 hours has been this WhatsApp group of the Club of Billionaires in New York City doing everything to shut down our encampments. We're up against a very, very powerful enemy. Whew, a ruthless enemy. And for this, young, inexperienced David to go toe-to-toe with a genocidal Goliath speaks a lot to carrying those 1968 and 1985, the anti-apartheid struggle, the solidarity with the Central American liberation, national liberation struggles. It says a lot about this generation. There was a polemic that came out between the CPUSA and then I work with the Midwestern Marx Collective, and it got into this a little bit. People might want to check that out on the Midwestern Marx website. Some of these, I think, comradely but critical pieces about CPUSA leadership or misleadership. And I say that in the spirit of unity, of course, with the rank and file. But some of these things came up because I think, too, Roger, from your generation and my generation to this generation, there are big differences. A lot of the ideological leaders, organic intellectuals emerging from this generation, this is the generation of my 22-year-old Ernesto Desalin and my 17-year-old Kawan Maru. Many of them sustain, Roger, I hope you're seated, this might knock some of us out of our chairs, that the central sphere of ideological struggle, what Fidel Castro called the most important struggle, the battle of ideas, it's playing out over the internet, over Twitter, and over social media and TikTok. And that's where they put a lot of their energy. For me, if you don't have a foot in the streets, again, I come from a different generation. If you're not organizing in the workplace, if you're not at the point of production, so how do we combine those two forms of struggle? When I was an undergrad, I came up with a slogan, 1 foot in the concrete in the Bronx and in Harlem and in the community, and 1 foot in the Ivy, because I did have to somehow graduate and pass literature humanities and art humanities in that, core curriculum, which is a very, colonial core curriculum that persists. So I think we can adapt that formulation to this generation today, where it's a foot in these concrete struggles, anti-imperialist struggles against police brutality, but also, of course, a foot, if you will, in the realm of social media, because you can get someone like Jackson Hinkle, who is untested in the streets in the class struggle, but he has 2.6 million followers. He calls himself a communist. He talks about MAGA communism. Good luck trying to understand those contradictions, but he can ratio the president. What does that mean? That means if President Joe Biden, as one of the main spokespeople of the axis of genocide, tweets something, a Jackson Hinkle can ratio him. A Jackson Hinkle can potentially reach millions of people just responding to the president. So how do we navigate that dialectic? It's not easy. And it's something where I think we will butt heads, but in the spirit of unity and the principle contradiction, as Mao Zedong understood it, hopefully it can be a way to advance the struggle in a unified way.
Great. Thank you, Danny. Let's take a few minutes to break. Alan, if you could do some announcements, and then we'll get into the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick announcements about future programs. On May 26th, we're going to have Mark Albertson speaking on a background to the Middle East conflict, going to some of the history, the colonial history of the Middle East, and talking about the roots of the problems that we're experiencing today in the past history of British colonialism in the Middle East. Mark is a military historian and a frequent presenter at the library, very popular, and usually gives a great presentation. On June 2nd, we're going to have a speaker from a university in Turkey providing a Marxist analysis of artificial intelligence. That should be good. That's on June 2nd. And then on June 9th, we're going to have Matthew Arrett, Canadian geopolitical analyst, who'll be speaking on the Gwisenko hoax of 1945 that started the Cold War, tying it into the current anti-communist PSYOP propaganda blitzkrieg. So if you are interested in attending future programs, we urge you to go to our website at icssmarks.org, icssmarks.org. Use the sign-up form to sign up for our email notification list. And you can also send us a note on our contact form if you have suggestions for speakers, topics, and there are also videos of past programs there. So that's icssmarks.org.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll go into the question and answer period. As usual, we ask people to either make a statement or a question, and most likely both. But to keep it to a reasonable amount of time, and that being 2 minutes. We'll try to get to everybody who has a question, and then Danny will have as much time as he wants to respond. I see that we have a number of hands raised. I'm going to start with Ann Lewis, and then Karen Pomeretz will be next. So Ann, please unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment. You're still muted. And you're still muted.
Okay, now I'm allowed to. Sorry, I've been writing screeds in the chat, so I don't really want to go after that so much. But I did have a question, which really I've been thinking about like nonstop for, well, really since January or so, which is what do labor unions do about this? How do we intersect? How do we push this to national, international labor unions?
If it's okay, I think we can do all the questions and comments, and then I can respond in bulk, or that's up to you all. How do you want me to do it?
Yeah, Danny, we have a tradition on that. If you don't mind, we'll continue that tradition and have it one-on-one.
Beautiful.
The reason for that is it's more interactive. It gives, sometimes the speaker can sort of drift the conversation in the speaker's direction, whereas making it on one-on-one is much more, we feel, democratic. So if you
Agreed.
let's do it that way.
Okay.
And Danny, please know I'm totally in support. I signed your petition and everything, but I'm also on the ground in Texas, and I'm on the executive board of a labor union, and I'm trying to figure out how to move this from a union standpoint. We've already got a very good. We've done all the obvious, but I think it's a continuing struggle. I don't think, we've got an emergency resolution that includes names of the organizations that have been censored, which indicates Palestine, which is a very strong statement. Our national has made quite a strong statement for a labor union, but I'm trying to figure out how do we mobilize on the ground, because I think we need every structure, every force we can have. I don't think we can, and I think we need it now. I don't think we can wait until the fall.
Yeah, 100%. Surely there's comrades on here more qualified to give an overview of all of labor's contradictions. I can say within my union, the professional staff, Congress, it's like that book by Dr. Mark Lamont Hill and the founder of Jewish Voice for Peace, Progressive Except for Palestine. This is an incredible opportunity for popular education. If we can go to every union meeting and request, 5 minutes or 15 minutes to give an overview that this is a colonial question, that the Palestinians are our sisters and brothers, cousins of dispossession, of Black America, of the Haitian anti-imperialist struggle. The last time I was in Haiti, the Haitians framed it as we're the Palestinians of the Caribbean. So to continue to draw these questions, where they've been able to weaponize this question of anti-Semitism. So if you just have one Zionist within a union or within a student group, they can try to sabotage everything. That's been very difficult. I think that speaks to the white and colonial entitlement. UAW has been strong. What other union was it? Was it teachers? Like 40,000 teachers just signed a resolution. I don't know if it was New York State or, Texas has had a massive movement in Austin and beyond. Shout out to Texas. The Longshoremen's Union on the West Coast is historically one of the most anti-imperialist unions. But we need more, we need more. There were not entire unions showing up to support the Colombia encampment. It was often a few representatives. We need all of SCIU. We need all of Unite Here. We need all of the different labor unions. But certainly, I'm sure someone can give a better overview than I can. I know in the Professional Staff Congress, our union of professors has been a struggle where there's been some support for like the free speech issues, but then when it comes to Palestine, again, I think that it's the Palestine exception, progressive, quote unquote, around everything except for Palestine. And there's I've had these conversations too with German quote unquote comrades. I could not believe, I mean, what country besides the US has such a historical responsibility to get this question correct? And some German friends, I think ex-friends at this point, not because I wanted to be that way, but I couldn't believe they were in full support of Zionism and the genocide, and very, very disappointing. So I'm all ears as well in terms of strategies with unions.
Okay, thank you. Up next will be Karen, followed by Javi, please.
Okay, thank you. Danny, I loved your analogy to a camping trip. That's cute. I think, in response to Anne's question, I think one small thing we can do is to encourage students to walk picket lines with workers, try to get to know people. If they're members of schools, to ally with teachers and things like that. I remember, Anne, you had written about being on the council, the Labor Council, and how people kind of shut down the resolution and how disappointing that was. I do have a question. I'm a co-editor of the Multiracial Unity blog that has a very strong line against nationalism and national liberation struggles. And we recognize Hamas as representing a ruling class of very wealthy people who are against women, support of fundamentalist religious beliefs, and should not be supported. We do support a movement to build a worker-student alliance that actually supports a revolutionary strategy, although it seems pretty impossible these days. And I just wonder, from all of you being in the encampments and Danny visiting many of them, is there any discussion or is there any attempt to raise discussions around nationalism and revolution for socialism or communism?
Yeah, great question. And all these contradictions have to be teased out. I thought this book was helpful. Hamas Contained the Rise and Pacification of Palestinian Resistance. In 1987, it's of course Yasser Arafat and the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. This is the face of Palestinian resistance. This was a secular face, it was a democratic face, it was a face connected to the Soviet Union, to the Warsaw Pact countries, to Cuba. And this was not good from the perspective of Zionism. Zionism knew that they could condemn and vilify and attack and genocide the Palestinian liberation struggle if they could get behind a non-secular, sectarian, Islamicist outfit. So we do have to go back to the origins of Hamas. Not to say that Hamas wasn't also an indigenous Palestinian creation, but I think we have to analyze all of that. I think, Karen's question goes to the heart of debates that have existed for decades. I loosely alluded to it when I mentioned the whole Soviet entrance into Hungary in 1956 is another example. These things have been hotly contested within the left. Some of Rogers' work when he says the anti.
Hi, I'll take do you make espresso drink?
I think Rogers' framing of it is the anti-imperialist left is very accurate. And if you haven't read that work by Roger, those articles and why we stand with Venezuela or Cuba, Nicaragua is probably the most under attack in terms of its leadership. So those contradictions are built in, and if Daniel Ortega's stance on this or that question, how can we support that leadership? But for me, it's about the Nicaraguan people. It's about analyzing the class character, the anti-imperialist nature of this different leadership. Certainly Hamas and Hezbollah don't come from the ideological training that I come from, but if they're the ones that are able to resist right now, I think Hamas's popularity has only increased as the genocide progresses. I mean, imagine telling, it's one thing to tell an occupied and colonized people how to wage their struggle, but a people facing genocide, you know, from the comfort of me sitting here in Berkeley or Cambridge, you know, with all of my material comforts, I'm gonna somehow lecture the Palestinian people as they face an actual extermination campaign, how they should conduct that struggle. In terms of nationalism, with the risk of oversimplification, there is nationalism that comes from the oppressed, and there's nationalism that comes from the oppressor, and we have to get into the class character of that nationalism. The different iterations of the Black nationalist struggle are not the same as what Trump puts out as America First and Make America Great Again, which are expressions of white supremacy and ruling class nationalism to divide and conquer and to scapegoat vulnerable workers. So I would analyze nationalism through that lens, but I think this would take us into more of a debate. Hopefully the answer was in some way slightly satisfactory.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I'm just concerned that these issues are being raised, you know, with the students, so we don't repeat past mistakes that we've made.
Yeah, Karen, I think those are good questions. I think, you know, maybe we'll send that back to the program committee and see if we can address them, because as Denny said, those are sort of perennial questions, and particularly right now they come to the fore, and we should have some good ways of understanding them in a way that moves the struggle forward. And I think Denny's point about it, the primary contradiction that we always have to keep in mind. So up next is Hobby, followed by Laura, please. So Hobby,
Hobby, thank you, sir.
Hobby.
It's okay. Yeah, Hobby. Danny, this has been a fantastic, enlightening presentation, kind of the nuts and bolts of struggle these days. Just for context, I'm a longtime CP member, CP USA, about 40 years worth. So I've seen a lot of the ups and downs. You may be aware that obviously Carlos and Noah have been talking seriously about ideological questions within the CP. And I don't want to get you way off track, but I'd really appreciate your insight. My concern is the question of fascism. And it seems that there are people within the CP that seem to think that somehow bourgeois democracy becomes fascist, whereas coming from an anti-imperialist standpoint, which I have from, you know, Latin America and other points, it seems to me that fascism is essentially a dagger that you know, imperialism has constantly available to it, and it pulls it out in periods of particular crisis, and like now, de-dollarization, everything else going on, you know, the upsurgence in BRICS, and of course the Palestinian struggle, which you've been part of right now. I'd like for you to think, or at least give us some of your best thoughts on how this fleshes out our understanding of fascism and how we deal with it. Because I don't think voting for fucking Joe Biden is going to prevent fascism. In fact, I think it's already here, but that's just me. Please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Hobby. I look forward to learning more from you, from your experience. Maybe we can set up, you know, some type of call between the comrades in Dallas and Carlos moved to Houston. So y'all, I know Texas is massive, but y'all are not too far. Exactly. I share your excitement.
I hope he's not drowned. I hope he's not drowned.
You know, in your last sentence, I think you stole the thunder of my answer. I mean, I think you gave the answer in the last sentence. Every day we're told by the Democratic Party machinery, like, oh my God, It's an existential crisis if Trump wins again. If this is not fascism, if you can exterminate an indigenous people, and the U.S. ruling class is carrying that out along with the Zionists, and we shouldn't confuse the tail of the kite in the kite. Again, what brings into existence this bizarre colonial ideology of Zionism? What puts teeth into it? It's the British Empire's needs. It's the burgeoning U.S. Empire's needs post World War II. So fascism has arrived. That's a quote from Joyce Jackson in 1967 in Soledad Brother. If we look around us, when professors, now it's not the fascism of of Germany, where they can just murder a professor like me and murder a socialist leader or a labor leader. I'm not, but it's certainly fascist techniques when they can go after us and dox us and accuse us of things that are so out there and get us fired. I mean, at this point, I know about 15 professors personally who've been fired. But then when you go wider into journalists and everyday workers, and these people put up these signs for Palestine to stop the genocide, and they were on, they were filmed, and then they were doxxed, and then they were fired, whether they worked at a post office or wherever. These are egregious violations of workers' rights, of free speech. So fascism has arrived. You cannot carry out a holocaust of human life without censorship, without fascism. How many of us, Sean King had 5.6 million followers on Instagram. He was getting all types of images from Yemen, from Palestine, because he was reaching, especially in the Black American public, more and more people. Meta and Zuckerberg decided he's gone. They decided with me on Twitter, after I was reaching millions and millions of people, I'm gone. So liberalism is hegemony. And our position at Midwestern Marx, I'm from Brockton, Massachusetts, in the Bronx, New York. So I have no idea how I could be any type of spokesperson for Midwestern Marx. But I'm the director of the international department. We want to get rid of the clown, but we want to really sit with the burgers, if you will. We want to get rid of Trump, but we can't get rid of all of Trump country. Trump country is not just in the Midwest. I mean, Trump country is right here in New York City and in upstate New York. And we want to build with these workers, and we don't, I was in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and when they heard my accent, some of the Trump country folks, the white working class, they were teasing me. You're from New York City. Well, you must get robbed by Mexicans every day. And their racism and xenophobia was coming out. And I absorbed those blows. I absorbed those blows. I could have dismissed them and said, you filthy racist. And that wasn't how am I going to build class unity? And at the end, I showed them the book, because I had done a little book tour out there in the Midwest of the Palestine book. And I couldn't believe that these backward, prototypical rednecks, quote unquote, right? They were like, yeah, it's a genocide. And I was like, holy cow. So I think when we go to the people and we sit down with the people, just like, I don't know if it was Ann or Karen said, we got to go visit the picket lines. The students have to visit the picket lines, and the picket lines have to go to the encampments. And that's why we need revolutionary organizations like the 1930s CP USA and that incredible legacy. And that's what the Panthers did, and the American Indian movement and the Young Lords. These are some of my communist reference points in history. But I think our position has to be, we got to go back to the Trump derangement syndrome. I don't know if that was that Black Agenda report that coined that term. I don't know who to give credit to, but yeah, liberalism is hegemony. They want to scare us so much, but it's not convenient for the ruling class. If Trump comes back, their entire proxy war on Russia, they're trying to pass 100 billion before Biden's out, so they don't have to worry about the next, $1 billion payments. And you don't know I mean, right now, Trump's saying that he would deport every member of Students for Justice in Palestine. It could be that on some questions, Trump is even more fascistic. And I'll end with this. In 2005, on September 24th, we mobilized 350,000 people against the war, the criminal war on the Iraqi people, on Iraqi sovereignty. 350,000 people surrounded the White House, the Pentagon, massive, massive, almost Vietnam era level numbers. Barack Obama, in a few short years, becomes president. Our anti-war demonstrations in defense of Iraqi and Palestinian and Afghani sovereignty, our anti-war demos went from hundreds of thousands to hundreds, because now there was a black man in office, there was a Democrat, he was progressive, and what lessons do we need to learn? And I think fascism is much better served with a Democrat in office who can masquerade somehow as being quote unquote better than the Republicans. And here's maybe the rhetorical question to end with. If it was a Trump presidency right now, how many liberals would be in the streets marching with us, able to see the genocide? But because and this is what CNN does, and this is what the New York Times do before they can even, well, they don't use the word genocide. They continue to say Israel versus Hamas, which is genocidal misinformation. But most of the headlines are Trump is in court and Trump this and Trump is so disgusting and he offends the liberal sensibilities, which he does. He is disgusting. We know that. I mean, we don't have to debate any of that. But Biden represents the continuity of the true ruling class and their interests. A Trump victory dialectically becomes a monkey wrench in the ruling class machinery come November 5th.
Thank you. So, Hobie, come back on July 7th to the library when Greg Godel will be talking on exactly the question that you raised. And I think you'll find it along your liking. And Danny, that was an incredibly good response. Laura is up next, followed by Raj, please.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about you were talking about the organization and how some differences between 1968 and 2024. And one of the things that I'm curious about is just the role of women. That in 1968, I don't think it was as strong as it is now. And I do want to say, I've said this before, but I think the baby boomers have messed up a lot. But one of the things I think that the baby boomers did that is having a long-term effect is that the generation that we raised did not have the horrors of sexism and racism and homophobism and all of that inculcated, put into the next generation. We managed not to put that into the next generation as much as it was put into us, whether we wanted it or not, it was there. And so I'm thinking, what if you can say something about the role of women in what's happening right now at the universities and something about that. And also I wanted to take this opportunity to say we do have somebody running for president. I mean, there are candidates, 2 women actually, Peace and Freedom has someone running, and in the Green Party, which has more ballot access around the country, there's Jill Stein, and she's standing against genocide, for peace, for workers, for the environment. And so this is something where where I think it's important when we talk about Trump and Biden that we bring in the other possibilities that people have.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better. Jill Stein doing everything to get on the ballot here. Of course, they make it as difficult as possible to have a third party candidate. We all surely know what it means to be out there in the under the sun, collecting the hundreds and hundreds and tens of thousands of signatures we need just so Jill Stein can be on the ballot. Claudia de la Cruz from the People's Forum, Dr. Cornel West. Yeah, I mean, I could show some more images of some of the women's leaders from the encampment if you wanted to see those. No question, I think there were more women camped out. If we were to break it down by gender, there was more women in leadership. Certainly, when I mentioned my 6,500 students over the past, 19, 20 years, whatever it was, majority women. It's not women students. It's not unusual that I would have like 22 women in a class and only 4 or 5 young male students. So, and that was the beauty of these encampments, the opportunity to study collectively, to mourn collectively, because we haven't really had time, in the aftermath of October 7th. I carried that genocide in my throat. I carried it in my chest. I carried it in my stomach. That's why I wrote it. I mean, very isolating moments. And what this encampment meant for me was a place to cry together, a place to scream together. I don't know if y'all have seen we did these primal scream events out in front of the Baroness's mansion, pretty symbolic and creative. Yeah, women's leadership is just absolutely phenomenal. I was so impressed by the different Ethiopian student organizations. And let me see if I can show a few images here. When I look at this, I might get a little distracted and mention other things, but I think they're all relevant. These were the drones that were over us constantly. Here you can see the helicopters. The helicopters were so low, we often couldn't sleep at night. It was a type of psychological warfare. So this is CNN, and I'm literally standing in the middle of their live broadcast CNN. And it's just, this is one of the important Palestinian leaders here in the background. His first name escapes me, but just to hear the CNN lies about our anti-Semitism and stuff hurt so much. I mean, we expanded. This was all led by women comrades. There's one of them there, expanding outside of the encampment to educate across the entire university. And to hear, oh, this was so beautiful. To hear 13-year-olds and 11-year-olds, certainly in the Palestinian movement, it's women on the front lines. Here's some images of our leadership. This was one of the first big days of the City College of New York encampment. If you notice here, there's no U.S. flag because when the police came in, and you have to look at these images, I mean, we were surrounded by hundreds and hundreds, at some point become 1,000 and thousands of thousands. Like what an incredible waste of how many hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars that could go for food for the people of Gaza and the people of West Oakland. And but yeah, no, women's leadership was incredibly inspiring. So thank you so much for raising that.
Okay, thank you. And Raj, you're up next, followed by Janet. Raj, you need to unmute.
Okay, sorry about that. I have one or two comments and then a question for Danny. Danny, first of all, thank you for your leadership in this movement. It's a very important movement, and your commitment to the cause of social justice globally against imperialism. Now, my understanding of fascism, which has been brought into discussion, is that it is a stage at which monopoly stage of capitalism, when capitalism runs into difficulty of producing functioning normally. And liberalism is at that stage when it's functioning more or less okay. It's always exploiting people, oppressing people, but it's functioning in terms of it's able to produce sufficient amount of profit rates, etc. But now we are in the stage of monopoly capital that's in crisis. And this time the crisis is different. The crisis is that it cannot compete against more efficient production in China, for example. And and so therefore liberalism, which under which you found yourself a place in Colombia, is having this difficulty how to manage the contradiction of its capitalism. So it comes out with brutality that we're seeing, all the students are being brutalized. But the student movement is very important. And I think the one question that I have for you is this. Have you studied how many universities and colleges around the country are having this student movement against which I totally agree with you, is a genocide. So if you can, if you know something about that, I'd like to hear the scope of this student movement. Thank you.
Yeah, the student movement, we're talking about hundreds of encampments. Not every, I mean, the Colombia encampment at its peak, it's like we took over like the East Lawns, roughly the size of a football field, 100 yards. It was sizable. We had Fashion Institute of Technology. Their encampment was dragged down about a week ago, and I was there on some of the final nights, and it was like, maybe 30 tents on actual sidewalks. I mean, we slept on grass. A tent on sidewalk is no joke. So they deserve even more credit for their self-sacrifice. Like, how many yoga mats and sleeping bags do you need to sleep on the asphalt? That was not pretty. But as Raj indicates, it is a mass movement. I agree, to use that chant from Argentina and South America, and que viva los estudiantes, long live the students. We should be following their hearts. The bourgeois media labeled them a moral army. I thought that was an apt way of putting it. And this has unmasked capitalism, unmasked the liberalism and liberalism's contradictions. Because of course, Colombia wants to masquerade as this great defender of academic freedom. Well, then why are they, firing my colleagues for free speech and academic freedom issues? The student movement has heightened the contradictions. And then in Iran, can then say, publicly, Iran said any of us who've been fired can go teach there and receive a salary. Now, how realistic is this? There's a blockade. There's been a war in Iran since 1979. But just in terms of the informational war and the media battle, that the Iranian, the Islamic Republic of Iran's leadership can say, any student who's been kicked out of college, come study for free here. So I do agree that the students dialectically, indirectly, have put Zionism and the entire U.S. system on the defensive, similar to the 1950s and the 1960s with the civil rights movement. If it were the Soviets with the big red, the bad red, whatever expletive, they were the bad guys. Well, no, look what's happening in Alabama and in Mississippi. So the Columbia students played those roles. There were real attacks. There were broken bones. Thank goodness, not too many. We saw the professor dragged out of her tent, the global studies professor at UCal Irvine. I mean, that reached millions and millions of people. It hit the mainstream media, or at least locally. So I agree. I agree. This has heightened the contradictions. Netanyahu had to come out. I mean, who could be so divorced from humanity to believe the Israeli state's rhetoric, that this was nothing but anti-Semitism? So thousands and thousands of students led by anti-Zionist Jewish students and Palestinian students were motivated to camp out by anti-Semitism. Wait a minute. The things don't add up. Again, if you want to see a real hit piece, all you have to do is read CNN or whoever, but The Atlantic went to great lengths, and because they mentioned my name in an entire section, I can forward that on to Roger and he can share it. if you want to read what a very sophisticated liberal piece looks like attacking us, the title is the most arrogant title ever. It's the title is shoot, let me find it real quick. It's like, oh, the unreality of Colombia's liberated zones, with liberated zones in quotation marks. And they go to such desperate lengths to try to prove that we're anti-Semitic. I mean, you'd have to be completely alienated from reality to gobble that stuff up, which what percentage of our class is. And you know, General Harriet Tubman had that quote, I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if they knew they were enslaved. And I don't think that the US people would have no reason to support children buried under rubble, the asphyxiation of a population, the dehydration of a civilian population. So that's why it's Hamas, 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 Hamas. And that's why the students said, stay focused, stay focused. This is not about Hamas. This is about, you know, the one way to frame it, this is not a political issue. This is a human issue. Palestinians are human beings. In US society, Palestinians are not seen as human beings. They're seen as refugees or terrorists. Does Palestine have a right to defend itself? Does Palestine have a right to even have an army? What army does Palestine have? So Hamas stepped into that dialectical void. And a lot of people don't want to see that. I mean, imagine waving our Western white finger, liberal finger. The Palestinians should do this and do that. It's ridiculous. They're resisting in the spirit of Malcolm X, whose birthday is today by any means necessary. It's also my father's birthday, and my father was no follower of Malcolm X. I'll tell you that guy. He was a stonemason and a veteran during the U.S. war of aggression that killed 3 million of our sisters and brothers in Korea. My father wouldn't have known what the word progressive meant. He was a cold warrior. That's how he was trained. He was the mayor of Maynard, Massachusetts. I'll take it back to my Massachusetts accent, Maynard. If anyone's, you know, got some East Coast or Massachusetts roots. So it's also his birthday. He died in 1997 from lung cancer. He was extremely anti-communist. That was his generation. But, you know, every day in recovery, in meditation, in healing, I feel like I get closer to my father. So just super grateful that he shares a birthday with Malcolm X. Is it Ho Chi Minh's birthday as well today? Is that correct?
I don't know that, but maybe somebody else knows. But I want to say that Comrade Gary Hicks has mentored you well.
Gary Presente, if anyone hasn't seen, I see Sharon's here. Sharon and I co-authored a tribute to Gary. I have notebooks. In notebooks, Gary and I up all night, and I'm asking him about, you know, Tanzania in the 1970s, and we read this book and that book together. He was a fierce ideological fighter and a poet, and this Wadi, one of his running mates in Cambridge, and all of my gratitude to you all, to that generation of CP fighters. This is my favorite part because I get to learn and listen and take notes, and hopefully I'll get out there to visit you all one of these days.
Let's hope you do that. Up next is Janet, followed by Mehmet.
Hey, thank you, Danny, for your courage and bravery on behalf of the Palestinian people and appearing here today. I was struck by the Zionist holding the Israeli flag, shouting, "Get off my block," or he had a sign that said that. Zionism has been occupying New York City and its institutions and across the US, including the US Congress and the office of the President of the United States. I'm wondering if you caught the disruption during the ICJ hearing on May 17th, when Israel was presenting its case about South Africa's bringing its latest provisional measures to have the court rule on a ceasefire. This was towards the end, someone yelled out, "Liars," someone in the audience, I guess, And the live stream hearing was paused for 18 seconds while they removed the person. The ICJ has been dragging its feet in that case. That said, I've been wondering how the US court system will handle the trashing of the First Amendment when the plethora of lawsuits, including yours, are eventually heard, especially in light of the passage of House Resolution 894 in December that quote, clearly and firmly states that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, end quote. I'd like you to comment on that. I'm also interested in what you think of what the students and others are planning as the 2024 election gets closer, like at the Democratic Presidential Convention in Chicago, which I understand maybe they may put it online instead of having it in person.
Yeah, like the graduation at Columbia in many of these schools, they would prefer to cancel commencement and graduations just so we can't speak truth to power. It's mind-boggling. Yeah, Chicago, another flashback to 1968. We see a pattern here because 1968 was also arguably the moment in U.S. history, certainly since the Great Depression, where we were on the verge of a revolution. Very exciting times. I mean, the disruption of the International Court of Justice. We're trying to disrupt and interrupt everywhere. This is a very decentralized movement. At the risk of oversimplification, here in New York City, there's kind of a more decentralized wing embodied by Within Our Lifetime, WALL. And then there's the Palestinian Youth Movement. They have their national conference in Detroit beginning next weekend. They seem to be more centralized. So these different things play out. But again, it's important, even if we have, like, we don't want one side calling the other side, wild anarchists. And then they say, well, you're just liberals and you ask the police for a permit. And how can we use multiple tactics? We don't have to we're all fighting for the same cause. How can we maximize our unity? Because the Zionist movement that occupies New York City, as you said, Janet, they divide and conquer is, of course, going to be their tactic. When I started going through this stuff at an individual level, it's kind of an epiphany. I was like, man, when I hear what John Jay College is saying, that their funding was going to be cut by a Title VI investigation, and that went to Chuck Schumer. And as soon as they fired me, like within 48 hours, another $1 million in funding was passed for John Jay College. These are big questions for the courts. Can Zionism hold a university hostage and blackmail them to enforce their will? Because my department head, John Gutierrez, he's Cuban American, and I've known him. He's a fierce opponent of the Cuban Revolution. We don't agree on anything, but we respect one another. We respect one another's family. We've worked together for like 15 years. He didn't want to fire me. He couldn't believe it. If it was just an ideological thing, I'm sure he would have replaced me 15 years ago. But there's a mutual respect because we're human beings with families. And so for them to be able to get involved in the Latin American and Latinx Studies department, and I just had an epiphany, and I was like, this has Supreme Court written all over it. I think this is going to be appealed, and it's going to play out in the courts, it's going to play out social media, it's playing out in the streets, it's playing out in the unions. This is an anti-genocidal struggle. I've never been up against something this intense in my lifetime. My graduate degree, I had to become an expert in what happened in Cambodia in the with the killing fields in the 1970s and the Vietnamese entrance ultimately into Phnom Penh and the Rwanda genocide and how memory has been controlled over that. Go to Ann Garrison's work at Black Agenda Report if you want to go deeper into that. And of course, we were just fed one version of that in graduate school at Columbia and at the School of International Public Affairs. What are they doing for Palestine now, where Hillary Clinton teaches, and this silence and the double standard? So I agree, this is all going to play out. I don't have a legal crystal ball, My lawyer is very confident, Palestine legal, all these amazing lawyers, and thank goodness it's pro bono because our salaries, we're taking this, I need to get one of those, buy a coffee for, fired Professor Danny Shaw because we have real life needs, and you're so caught up in the struggle, you forget like, well, money has to come in or what's going to happen over time. So hopefully I answered that.
Yeah, I can dig that. We are nearing the end. And so we have Mehmet, Jean, Richard, and Sharon in that order. So let's, Jean, if you could unmute and unvideo yourself or re-video yourself.
Okay. There I am, I think.
No video, but good sound.
No, for some reason it won't. I know
Okay.
here
There
I am.
you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, thanks, Dennis, so much for your talk. It's I really appreciate everything you're saying there and support, 100%. You're doing such great work. Thank you. And it's also it's great to see another Columbia man there. I have a lot of affection, I'm sure you do, for affection for Columbia University and my years that I spent there. And I was there in 1968 for the Columbia strike. And I just want people to remember, there was another genocide going on, but it was being carried out not by U.S. proxy forces in Israel, but by U.S. troops. 58,000 U.S. troops were killed. Like 3 million Vietnamese were killed. And there was also ecocide, the dropping of Agent Orange, which is still polluting the environment there. So that's, very important. I think we need to bear that in mind, not to minimize what's going on there, but to, remember some of those other things that were going on. Just one little comment or question. We mentioned Victoria Nugent being on the distinguished professor at Columbia, as is Hillary Clinton. So we have these two war criminals, basically, at the head of this institution. And that's not really surprising. But what is great is that in spite of being this ruling class institution, the students at Columbia are learning much different lessons. And how is that possible? I just want to know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll be real brief. I know we're coming to the end. When I went on Columbia's campus in 1996, I just remember there's this documentary, Up Against the Wall, motherfucker. That's not me cursing. That's the name of the documentary. No one be offended. But it was about the Columbia student strike in 1968. And hopefully, Eugene, we can talk more. And I'd love to learn more lessons from 1968 and the SDS. And I came on Columbia's campus and I started in 1996 liberation classes because I knew Columbia wasn't going to teach us about the Zapatistas and the Young Lords and Puerto Rican independence. So I feel, I feel the warmth of the Columbia patriotism, if you will, that I never really, I felt it sometimes before, but I echo what you said when the students took Hind Hall, Hamilton Hall. It reminded me of when they took it in 96 for ethnic studies. And yeah, there's an incredible legacy there. So thank you for everything you've done. You all paved the way for much of what's happening today.
Okay, thank you. Up next is Richard.
I'm up next?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation, Danny. I'm going back to my 60s. Yes, when I was in school, that was interrupted by a certain draft thing. One of the I was on the campus of the University of Maine at Orono, and when we were having protests against the Vietnam War, but also I was also recruited at the same time to participate in the Great Boycott. I'm not sure that I see that same kind of thing going on in the current situation. I don't see the comrades getting out and organizing in the community in particular. I see them very much restricted to the campuses. And could you comment about getting off of the campuses? Thank you.
Sure, great point, Richard. We had anti-gentrification, anti-eminent domain marches through Harlem, trying to do that. And that's one of the reasons we thought it was so important 20 blocks up from Columbia to take over the city college in the spirit of the 1969 occupation at City College, the last time I think CUNY buildings were occupied. And we could interface with the community. I have some images there I was showing earlier. Like the first thing the police did when they really ramped up their security was to make sure that we were disconnected from the community. No one else could get in. We could no longer get out. The die was cast. So your point is 100% well taken. We can't be isolated. We have to, and Colombia is one of the biggest landowners. Colombia has expanded viciously in Washington Heights and in Harlem. So this is an anti-displacement struggle from Harlem to Palestine. Occupation is a crime.
Thank you. So our last person to give a question is Sharon, and then Danny, if you would also, if you'd like to make some sort of final summary remarks, if you feel like you're up to doing that, or that would be appropriate. But Sharon, it's all yours.
I just wanted to contribute with regard to voting. I cannot accept the notion that worse is better. I think there is a difference between a Biden administration and a Trump administration. And Trump has laid out through his think tank reports exactly what he would do. And I think we have to take him at his word. It's true that in California, a vote for Jill Stein might be a protest vote that is worth taking. But if I still lived in Michigan, I would definitely be arguing that people in Michigan, although I think what they've done so far is great in the primaries, I think that in the general election, I would be out there arguing that the pro-Palestine forces should advocate a vote for Biden. A Trump administration is going to reimpose an immigration ban, completely close the border. They're talking about concentration camps for illegals. They're talking about firing masses of federal employees and a lot of other stuff. And I just think that to say that, if he comes in, if they come in, that things will be worse, and therefore that will be more of an upsurge, is not a Marxist point of view. It's not in favor of how we can best participate. What conditions would make it best for the class struggle?
Yeah, it's not that I entirely disagree. I think it's dialectical. I think the contradictions are completely there. I mean, certainly women's reproductive rights under a Trump administration would take a heavier blow. I will be in Michigan. There's two big conferences that should reach thousands and over the internet, millions. These questions will be brought up. We've seen the uncommitted votes. I think these are important discussions and polemics. I don't know that I have my, mind completely. The Leninist formulation is that bourgeois democracy is every 4 years we have the right to pick our oppressors. And in this case, we can say concretely, this year we have the democratic right to pick between one génocidaire, one carrier out of genocide, and another and even Robert F. Kennedy would continue the genocide. I think it has to all be laid out on the table. And if there's a democratic centralist organization, if they decide to run a third-party candidate, if they decide this, that's why there's democratic centralism. So thank you, Sharon, for introducing that other point. And it sounds like on July 7th, I'll try to come back to listen to Greg Godel, someone I have read and studied and respect for sure, to get deeper into the blazing urgent question of what is to be done that Sharon touches upon.
Thank you, Danny. Are there any kind of concluding remarks you'd like to make? There's so much you've left us with, and we're very grateful for that. But is there anything that you want to conclude with?
And Mehmet, didn't Mehmet have something to say?
He said that given the time, he'll wait till the next time. And the next time should be soon, because we really would want you to come back very soon.
And could you post your contact information in the?
Yeah, definitely. I'll just multitask for a second, or remind me at the end. I'll end by saying that I was doing something with DD Geopolitics, and one of the listeners phoned in and said something very dear to my heart. I think it's my own story, which I at least touched upon. I'm a survivor of generational trauma, and trauma is kind of a great class equalizer, especially in this age of identity politics. How can, if you just look at me on paper, I'm a white male. I'm 6'6", 250 pounds, and how what the heck do I have in common with Palestine and the liberation of Puerto Rico and in the blockade of Cuba and the health of the Bolivarian project in Bolivia and Nicaragua and all these international struggles? And yeah, it was my own trauma, and it's so beautiful that you all got to see my mom very briefly in that mini documentary there. And this caller called in and said, could it be because of your own PTSD that you can't sleep at night if you haven't given everything for Palestine? And Palestine is the underdog within all of us. As the Palestinians say, keep talking about Palestine. As the mayor of the ghetto, the mayor of South Central Los Angeles, Bunchy Carter, murdered by the FBI and the LAPD and their infiltration of the US organization in 67 or 69? I think it was 69. Bunchy Carter said, hey, brother, even if you spit, do something. I know you all are tested, comrades through decades now. Let's just keep doing everything we can, get as creative as you can, whether it's we need all tactics. We don't have the luxury of dismissing this or that tactic. This is the moment for diverse ideological organizations, whether it's Work Is World or CP or PSL or Jackson Hinkle or Haas and Midwestern Marx. I mean, this is the time for unity. To quote George Jackson. Settle your quarrels. Fascism has arrived. It's the Palestinian liberation struggle is a lightning rod. It's amazing to see in rural Somalia and in Algeria and in Nigeria and in Harlem and across the world. Black America has answered the call to stand in solidarity with Palestine, and that's what I tried to share. Through the different media. Palestine is the underdog that lives within all of us. So thank you for the invite, and I'll put my email as well here, and I put my social media contact.
So thank you so much, comrade. I think it's clear the struggle continues, but this presentation today, I think, inspires us more, all of us, to really struggle harder. So thank you so much, Danny, and look forward to you coming back.
Thank you. Thanks,
Danny, have you put your email in the chat, please? Have you done that?
I
If you could.
officially have now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch. A lot of
Yeah.
fun hanging out with you all, and I look forward to learning more soon. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Nebo Proctor Marxist Library receives no corporate funding, nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses. Since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums, please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, at yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Nebo Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml at marxistlibr.org, and the website is marxistlibr.org.